Hello, YouTubers. Welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda, and I have a bunch of articles here that have to do with Donald Trump. So we'll see what's going on with him from the weekend. The first one here is off BizPack Review, and it says, student threatened with legal action stands his ground after recording professor's insane anti-Trump rant. And here's how it reads. Campus craziness is running amok thanks to radical leftist loons masquerading as professors. A student at Orange Coast College in Costa Mesa, California, is being threatened with legal action and possible expulsion. Video of an unhinged professor going off on an anti-Trump rant. Olga Perez Stable Cox, a human sexuality instructor, trashed Trump as a white supremacist and called his election an act of terrorism, which would make the 63 million people who voted for him terrorists. Divided. We have been assaulted. It is an act of terrorism. One of the most frightening things for me and most people in my life is that the people who are committing the assault are among us. Supremacist and a vice president that is one of the most anti-gay humans in this country, she says. One student was so offended by the over-the-top tirade that he recorded it. The video was posted on Facebook page of the Orange Coast College Republicans. The teachers' union representing Professor Olga Perez Stable Cox responded by warning the group that they're considering legal action. This is an illegal recording without permission of the instructor. The student will be identified and may be facing legal action, the union warned. And it does show the video here in this, if you want to pull it up and look at it. All of these URLs are in the description of the video for your convenience. It says, but Josh Recalde Martinez, president of the College Republicans Club, told CBS LA that they won't be bullied into silence. At this point, it's not even education anymore, it's indoctrination. They want it to be known so that maybe we would get scared and take down the video, but to the union, I want to say we are not going to be doing that. Attorney Sean Steele, who volunteered to represent the College Republicans Club, is disgusted by the union's strong-arm tactics. The union the unions are acting like thugs, like bullies themselves, Steele said. Every student knows it. If you stand up to your professor 90% of the time, the professor is going to punish you. The Orange Coast College Republicans have filed a formal complaint about the professor's intimidation tactics, while other students bashed her on ratemyteacher.com. I felt censored and bullied if I did not agree with her opinions, one student wrote. Hear more Professor Olga Perez Stable Cox's propaganda here in a video. So there you have that article. The next one I have is off of Bloomberg, and it says Exxon CEO Tillerson emerging as Trump's Secretary of State pick. ExxonMobil Corporation Chief Executive Officer Rex Tillerson is emerging as Donald Trump's choice for Secretary of State, a move that would hand top diplomatic powers to a man whose ties to Russian President Vladimir Putin go back almost 2 decades. A source close to Trump said the president-elect had not formally offered Tillerson the job yet, but is likely to do so. An announcement is expected in the next few days, according to the person who asked not to be identified, discussing internal deliberations. NBC earlier reported that Tillerson was Trump's pick. Tillerson met with Trump for more than 2 hours on Saturday. The development, the latest in weeks of speculation about Trump's Secretary of State choice, quickly triggered pushback from some lawmakers. And NBC said its source, people close to the transition team, cautioned that nothing is final until the president-elect makes the announcement. Trump has said he'll disclose his decision next week. In an interview to air On Fox News Sunday, Trump praised Tillerson without confirming that the 64-year-old oil executive was his final choice. He's a world-class player, Trump told correspondent Chris Wallace, according to a preview posted on Fox News Facebook page on Saturday. ExxonMobil Corporation is unbelievably managed, Trump said. Who hits Exxon's mandatory retirement age of 65 in March, would be the first oil executive and only the second Texan to lead the State Department. Mitt Romney, the 2012 Republican nominee for president and a critic of Trump during this year's campaign, remains on the short list of candidates, according to two people familiar with this matter, who asked not to be named because the discussions are private. Kellyanne Conway, a top Trump advisor, said Friday on Fox News that the list currently includes, in addition to Tillerson and Romney, Alan Mulvaney, the former CEO of Ford Motor Company, former CIA Director David Petraeus, Senate Foreign Relations Committee Chairman Bob Corker, former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations John Bolton, and Representative Diana Rohrabacher, a Californian Republican. NBC reported Saturday that Bolton may be trapped as Tillerson's deputy. Tillerson has ties to Putin that go back to 1999 when the pair met on remote Sakhalin Island in Russia's Far East. He was awarded Russia's Order of Friendship, a high civilian honor given to distinguished foreign nationals. As recently as 2015, he visited with officials in Putin's inner circle. That connection could make him a useful bridge between the Russian leader and Trump, who has repeatedly said he'd seek more cooperative relations with Moscow. A great advantage is he knows many of the players and he knows them well, Trump said in the Fox News interview. He does massive deals in Russia. He does massive deals for the company, not for himself, for the company. Under Tillerson's leadership, Russia became Exxon's single bigger exploration theater as the company amassed drilling rights across tens of millions of acres, dwarfing its holdings in its home country, formerly its largest drilling opportunity, according to U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission filings. When Putin regime forced Royal Dutch Shell PLC and other foreign investors to cede control of a massive gas export project on Sakhalin Island in 2007, Exxon's holdings in the same region remained intact and untouched by government. Tillerson steered Exxon's historic 2011 deals with Kremlin-controlled oil explorer that gave the U.S. driller access to Russia's vast Arctic, deepwater, and shale oil deposits. Shortly after the venture, million-barrel crude field in Kara Sea, the U.S. and European Union imposes sanctions to punish Russia for supporting separatists in eastern Ukraine and for annexation of Crimea. Forced Exxon to surrender drilling rights in Russia, but required that it and all other U.S. and EU companies halt their most ambitious projects. Would probably face stiff opposition from Democratic and some Republican senators for both his foreign business ventures and an escalating over how much Exxon knew about climate change and when. Republican Senator John McCain, chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, said on Fox News that Tillerson's relationship with Putin is a matter of concern. U.S.-Russia ties are at a tense moment after the CIA reportedly concluded Russia intervened to help Trump during the presidential election campaign, a finding the Trump team had dismissed. Senator Bob Menendez, the top Democrat on the Foreign Relations Committee, called the choice alarming and absurd in a statement on Saturday. With Rex Tillerson as our Secretary of State, the Trump administration would be guaranteeing Russia has a willing accomplice in the president's cabinet guiding our nation's foreign policy, Mendez said. Has moved Exxon to recognize the reality of climate change, a shift from position of his predecessors. The risk of climate change is clear, and the risk warrants action. increasing carbon emissions in the atmosphere are having a warming effect, the company says on its website. Still, environmental groups quickly decried the potential appointment. Tillerson may be a friend of Putin, but he's no friend of the planet, Maybove, executive director of 350.org, said in a statement. Gene Kropinski, president of the League of Conservative Voters, said in a statement that this seems like it should be fake news, but it's all too real and scary. With the selection, Trump would end a feud that had broken out amongst his advisors and supporters over the potential choice of Romney, who sought to mobilize opposition to Trump during the presidential campaign, calling him a con man and a fake. Selection will also fuel critics who say U.S. foreign policy has long been driven by the country's demand for oil, and that naming an oil executive is the last straw. Trump said the U.S. should have seized Iraq's oil fields after the U.S. invasion in 2003, a move which he said would have prevented the rise and spread of the Islamic State terror groups. I've always said it shouldn't be there, but if we're going to get out, take the oil, Trump said in September. It used to be so that to the victor belong the spoils. Now there was no victor there. Believe me, there was no victor. But I always said, take the oil. An Exxon lifer and University of Texas trainer engineer Tillerson would add to the cabinet increasingly full of millionaires and billionaires, including Commerce Secretary nominee Wilbur Ross, whose fortune is estimated at about $2.9 billion. Tillerson was paid $27.3 million in salary, bonus, stock awards, and other compensation in 2015. 2.6 million shares of Exxon common stock had a value of about $228 million as of early December. After becoming CEO in 2006, Tillerson led Exxon through more than a decade of ups and downs that included the late Hugo Chavez seizure of Venezuelan oil fields, annual profits that set U.S. corporate records, and shale acquisition that turned into a $35 billion wrong-way bet on natural gas. Outside work, Tillerson used his cash as a past president of the Boy Scouts of America to help end a long-standing ban on gay scouts in 2013. He also trains rodeo horses on his ranch north of Fort Worth, Texas, and is a former competitive rider. Tillerson and his wife, Brenda, contributed $493,000 to federal candidates and committees over the last decade. Their largest chunk, $159,000, went to National Republican Senatorial Committee. He contributed the maximum $2,700 allowed under the law to former Florida Governor Jeb Bush in 2016 presidential primaries, and $5,000 to the Right Rise USA, the pro-Bush super PAC, to Trump. Brenda Tillerson sat out the presidential race entirely. And then there's more this in this same URL. It says senators balk at Tillerson over Putin before he's nominated. So, you know, if you want to read up, you can pull that up and read. The next one is off of freebeacon.com. Republicans form Second Amendment Caucus. A group of House Republicans formed Congressional Second Amendment Caucus on Thursday. The group, headed by Republican Thomas Massie of Kentucky, representative, said the caucus plans to sponsor pro-gun legislation in the upcoming Congress. Caucus members will lead efforts in the House of Representatives to pass meaningful firearms legislation and protect Americans against infringements of the Second Amendment, the group said in a statement. Massie said the election of Donald Trump and Republican majorities in both houses of Congress were the catalyst for the formation of the caucus. The recent election results present us with new opportunity to advance pro-gun legislation and reverse the erosion of the Second Amendment that's occurred over the last few decades, he said. I look forward to working with the new president and this determined group of conservatives to promote a pro-gun agenda. In addition to sponsoring and supporting pro-gun bills, the caucus said they also plan to invite firearm experts, constitutional scholars, and pro-gun groups to speak to them regularly. Some of those pro-gun voices praised the newly formed caucus in the statement released by the group. With so many laws disarming the poorest and most vulnerable people of our society and others who face real threats to their safety, it is reassuring to know the Second Amendment caucus is there to ensure people's safety, said John Lott, a pro-gun researcher and author. Lawyers are working to secure pro-gun reforms in the courts. It's reassuring to know that the Second Amendment caucus is doing the same in the legislature, said attorney who has represented gun rights interests in a number of landmark federal court cases. The inaugural members of the caucus are Republican Representatives Jeff Duncan of South Carolina, Ted Yoho of Florida, Brian Babin of Texas, Paul Gozer of Arizona, Mark Meadows, North Carolina, Ken Buck of Colorado, Alex Mooney of West Virginia, Justin Amash of Wisconsin, Jody Heiss of Georgia, Dave Brott, Warren Davidson of Ohio, Scott Perry of Pennsylvania, and James Comer of Kentucky. The group will allow other members to join, but only if it deems their voting records on gun issues are acceptable. The next article that I have for you is off of thegatewaypundit.com, and it says, boom, Trump announces Sprint agreement to invest $50 billion in U.S. and create 50,000 jobs. And there is video in this if you'd like to pull it up and take a look at it. The article reads, President-elect Donald Trump announces on Tuesday afternoon in Trump Tower that Sprint Corp had agreed to invest $50 billion in the United States and create 50,000 new jobs. Trump met with Mashoni Son, who is chairman of Sprint and CEO of SoftBank Group Corp. Tower today. President-elect Donald Trump said Tuesday that the Tokyo-based parent company of Sprint Corporation has agreed to invest $50 billion and create 50,000 jobs in the United States. Trump made the remarks standing beside Mashoni, I'm guessing that's how it's pronounced, Son, who is chairman of Sprint and CEO of SoftBank Group Corporation that owns more than 80% of Sprint. The Overland Park-based wireless carrier was not mentioned in a brief video of Trump's comments that ABC posted on Twitter. Trump made the announcement this afternoon. And there's video for you to review at your leisure. The next one we have, if I get the hamster to keep up with me here, there we go, climatedepot.com. And it says, Trump ignores Gore's advice, instead picks skeptic to head EPA and dismantle climate agenda. Climate Depot publisher Mark Morano's statement on President-elect Donald Trump's selection of Oklahoma Attorney General Scott Pruitt pick for EPA chief. President-elect Donald Trump's appointment of Scott Pruitt is a breath of fresh air. No longer do we have to suffer under President Obama's ridiculous EPA climate regulations. It is also refreshing that Republican president is not throwing the EPA over to the green activists and the media appointing a weak administrator. Christine Todd Whitman, he is not. Trump's pick of Pruitt finally means that a Republican president is standing up to the green establishment. Historically, EPA chiefs have been among the most pro-regulatory members of the past Republican presidents, from Nixon through Ford, Reagan, and both Bushes. Trump has broken the cycle. Climate sanity has been restored to the U.S. EPA. No longer do we have to hear otherwise intelligent people charge in DC blather on about how EPA regulations are necessary to control the Earth's temperature or storminess. No longer do we have to endure GOP presidents avoiding battle over the green agenda by picking EPA chiefs that were timid at best. We know how bad GOP EPA picks have been in the past because many former GOP EPA chiefs endorsed President Obama's EPA climate regulations. If climate skeptics were worried about Trump's meeting with former Vice President Al Gore earlier this week, the pick of Pruitt is reassuring. Basically, Trump listened to what Gore had to say at their New York City meeting, and then he exercised his good judgment and did the exact opposite. The UN Paris Climate Exchange Agreement and the EPA's climate regulation claim to be able to essentially save the planet from global warming, but even if you don't accept the UN and Al Gore's version of climate change claims, the UN Paris Agreement or EPA's alleged climate regulations would not save the planet. University of Pennsylvania geologist Dr. Robert Gingigax has noted, none of the strategies that have been offered by the US government or by the EPA or by anybody else has the remotest chance of altering climate if in fact climate is controlled by carbon dioxide. In layman's terms, all of the so-called solutions to global warming are purely symbolic when it comes to climate. So even if we are actually faced with climate catastrophe and we had to rely on UN climate agreement, we would all be doomed. Even the proponents admitted the EPA regulations are purely symbolic. And the article goes on for quite a ways there if you want to read the rest on that, but that hits the high points on it. So maybe we'll get let up on some of these EPA rules and regulations that they've been coming up with over the years. The next one we have is off of BizPac Review, and it says, Ted Cruz and Ron DeSantis take on term limits. Prepare a drain the swamp bill. Now the Republicans have control of the executive branch, both houses of Congress and the majority of the states. Senator Ted Cruz and Ron DeSantis think they can now get term limits implemented for senators and congressmen. In an op-ed for the Washington Post, the two senators said that creating a constitutional amendment to limit the terms of congressmen and senators would prove Congress has actually heard the voice of the people to drain the swamp. Through our founding fathers, though our founding fathers declined to include term limits in the Constitution, they feared the creation of a permanent political class that existed parallel to, rather than enmeshed within, American society. As Benjamin Franklin said, in free governments, the rulers are the servants and the people their superiors. For the former, therefore, to return among the latter was not to degrade, but to promote them, he wrote. The amendment would limit senators to 2 terms and congressmen to 3. The senators pointed out that Rasmussen polls showed 74% of Americans support the idea of term limits for Congress, and that Trump mentioned imposing them when he campaigned for the presidency. The time is now for Congress and the overwhelming support of the American people to pass a constitutional amendment establishing congressional term limits and send it to the states for speedy ratification, the senators wrote. With control of a decisive majority of the states, the executive branch, the House of Representatives, and the Senate, the Republican Party has the responsibility to respond to the voters' call to action. We must and we can deliver, they said. That I have is off of the All News Pipeline, and it says the CIA's secret plans for President Trump and America exposed as YouTuber destroys the mainstream media. Back in July of 2013, WND published a story in which they reported a new law allowed Barack Obama to take over the media, granting the federal government massive new powers to saturate American people with domestic propaganda at their expense. If you're one of those people who think WND's story of this ANP story might be Russian propaganda, we always suggest you check at least 3 different sources to confirm your information. On May the 18th of 2012, BuzzFeed reported congressmen seek to lift propaganda ban. Propaganda that was supposed to target foreigners could now be aimed at Americans, reversing a long-standing policy disconcerting and dangerous, says Schrank. It says, I just don't want to see something this significant, whatever the pros and cons, go through without anyone noticing, says one source on the Hill who is disturbed by the law. According to this source, the law would allow U.S. propaganda intended to influence foreign audiences to be used on the domestic population. The new law would give sweeping powers to the government to push television, radio, newspaper, and social media onto the U.S. public. If it removes the protection for Americans, says the Pentagon official who is concerned about the law, it removes oversight from the people who want to put out this information. There are no checks and no balances. No one knows the information is accurate, particularly accurate, or entirely false. On July the 14th of 2013, Foreign Policy reported U.S. repeals propaganda ban, spreads government-made news to Americans. For decades, so-called anti-propaganda law prevented the U.S. government's mammoth broadcasting arm from delivering programming to American audiences. But on July the 2nd, that came silently to an end with the implementation of new reform passed in January. The result? An unleashing of thousands of hours per week of governmental funded radio and TV programs for domestic U.S. consumption in a reform initially criticized as a green light for U.S. domestic propaganda efforts. So what just happened? On July the 16th of 2013, SF Gate reported U.S. government-funded domestic propaganda has officially hit the airwaves. The U.S. government's mammoth broadcasting arm has begun with the unleashing of thousands of hours a week of government-funded radio and TV programs for domestic U.S. consumption, John Hudson of Foreign Policy reported on Sunday. The content arrives with enactment of the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act of 2012, sponsored by Representative Mac Thornberry, Republican of Texas, and Representative Adam Smith, Democrat of Washington, which was inserted into the 2013 National Defense Authorization Act, called the NDAA. The reform effectively nullifies the Smith-Mundt Act of 1948, which was amended in 1985 specifically to prohibit U.S. organizations from using information to influence public opinion in the states. While Hillary Clinton is busy lamenting over fake news winning the election for Donald Trump, and Obama cries Russian propaganda into his Cheerios while CIA declares the Russians hacked the election, it's great to see Donald Trump ripping those who are really pushing the fake news as the 2016 election saw Americans awaken en masse. As we see and hear, first video below, an excellent new video going viral. We suggest everybody watch. Fake news has already caused massive chaos and social unrest across America and has been pushed by the mainstream media. The mainstream media has very real blood on their hands, warning us of the dark forces within, just as Alex Jones warns us in the second and final video below. We're getting more and more evidence every day are still attempting to extinguish the First Amendment in America. The new story from Breitbart is called 8 Times Hillary Clinton Pushed Fake News. And while the 8 examples seen below outline some of what we know of what still lurks behind closed Clinton and MSM doors. Vince Foster, what more? Number 1, landing under sniper fire. Number 2, her grandmother was an immigrant. Number 3, recruiter shut down her attempt to join the Marines because she was a woman. Number 4, Benghazi attack was a protest against a YouTube video. Number 5, she never sent or received classified emails on her homebrew email server. Number 6, Russia was behind WikiLeaks release of John Podesta's email. Number 7, she's a sweet grandma. Number 8, a stranger just happened to find her in public. And we're now witnessing the final gasp of alternate media in America as asked by General Salente in his news story from King World News. Has liberty departed America, as Paul Craig Roberts asked in a most recent story? With one California professor calling Donald Trump's win an act of terrorism while rapidly dying mainstream media hyperventilates over its self-contrived Russian conspiracy stealing the election for Trump, we see why some are so concerned still, even though Trump won, as we live within the most dangerous days and hours of our republic. As we read in Robert's story, the masses of American people have been brainwashed, as for many, many years shall they be indeemably so. If so, all bets are off for the future of humanity. To close from Craig Roberts, a CIA success in controlling public perception of what our founding fathers would have regarded as suspicious events involving our governments enables those in power positions within the government to orchestrate events that serve hidden agendas. The events of September 11th created a new paradigm of endless war on behalf of Washington-dominated world. The CIA's success in controlling public perceptions has made it impossible to investigate elite political crimes. Consequently, it is now possible for treason to be official U.S. government policy. Is the CIA correct that American people are forever brainwashed, subject only to the explanation given by their overlords? If so, all Americans are slated to be the most oppressed people of history. And there's several videos in that you could take a look at if you would like to. The next one is off of LibertyWritersNews.com. It says, after attacking Trump for a year, look how Trump finally got his revenge on CNN. CNN is racist. We all knew that. But now the entire world is going to know. CNN's being sued for being racist. You heard it right here. After attacking Trump for being racist, CNN is now being sued for being racist. According to Rodney Ho, AJC.com, former and current black employees are going to file a class action lawsuit against CNN, Turner Broadcasting, and the parent company Time Warner. They are suing for racial discrimination. As a result of current discrimination lawsuit filed on behalf of Dwayne Walker versus CNN, Time Warner, and Turner, we have uncovered stories involving abuse, power, nepotism, revenge, retaliation, and discrimination, said Daniel Meacham in a press release. And it says, as a result of the current discrimination lawsuit filed on behalf of Dwayne Walker versus CNN, Time Warner, Turner, we have uncovered stories involving abuse of power, nepotism, revenge, retaliation, and discrimination, Meacham said in the release. They have declined to comment on the suit at this point. That's why we need every single one of you patriots reading this to share, share, share. The next one we have is off of Liberty Writers News. It says, breaking, the owner of CNN just gave Donald Trump the most wonderful news of all. Frozen over. I mean, it must have. CEO Time Warner, who owns CNN, is willing to come out and declare that the Democrats are destroying our democracy. I've been kidding. Time Warner CEO Jeff Bewkes told Business Insider's Harry Blodgett on Tuesday that the real threat to the First Amendment did not come from President-elect Donald Trump during the campaign, but rather from the Democratic Party. He explained that Democrats have been trying to restrict the First Amendment to their own media for a while now, but by trying to pass it off as campaign finance reform. The press tends to miss that because they tend to lean that way, and therefore they're supporting what they think we're viewing, I think, over charitably, as something in cleaning up money in politics, when in fact what it would do is restrain multiple voices, he says. It makes a lot of sense when you think about it. Citizens United may be responsible for super PACs, which are abused, but they also give labor unions and corporations the right to voice their political opinions for the good of their industry and members. So thank you, CEO of Time Warner, Jeff Bewkes, for sticking up for Donald Trump and against the Democrats who are trying to silence the free press. Now they're claiming anyone who disagrees with them is fake news. The next one that I have is off of the EU Times, and it says, Trump ability to destroy ISIS outlawed as silent coup against him accelerates. An astonishing Ministry of Defense report circulating in the Kremlin today says that the President-elect Donald Trump's ability to destroy Islamic State terrorist was outlawed this past week by President Obama and globalist factions in the U.S. Congress as the silent coup against him accelerates, with the new calls being made to deny him the American presidency in the 19th December Electoral College vote because he's a traitor. Note some, this article has been translated into English from Russian, so their words might be a little bit off from what we have here, but I'll go ahead and read this. It says, according to this report, globalist forces loyal to President Obama in the U.S. Congress this past week, a staggering 3,076 pages long, new titled the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2017, that not only gives to Islamic terrorists portable missiles to shoot down planes throughout the world, but also expressly forbids by any U.S. president from cooperating with Russia to defeat these monsters. Shortly after his winning the American presidency on November the 8th, this report notes, President-elect Trump began negotiations with Kremlin on a master plan to defeat these Islamic terrorists forever, but whose efforts were then, past Thursday, December the 8th, derailed by U.S. Congress, who passed this new law forbidding him to have any defense cooperation with Russia until the Secretary of Defense, in coordination with Secretary of State, provides a certification that Russia has stopped illegally occupying Crimea. With Crimea having always been an essential part of Russia, this report explains, it was reintegrated into the Federation in 2014 after 95.7% of its citizens voted to do so, following the Obama-Clinton overthrow of the democratically elected government of the Ukraine in what the American global intelligence giant Stratfor, known as the Shadow CIA, called the most blatant coup in history, and who then installed U.S.-backed neo-Nazi-led government, passed a law forbidding anyone to speak, read, or hear the Russian language. As no nation in the world, especially the United States, would ever cede any of its territory or citizens to such a foreign power as the Nazi-aligned Ukraine, this report continues, this new law being forced upon President-elect Trump is impossible to be met, meaning that the American new leader will not be able to cooperate with Russia to destroy these Islamic terrorists, and that, shamefully too, denies his new administration $10 million unless Trump voids arms control and open skies treaties with Russia and further orders him to give $3.4 billion of taxpayer money to NATO to confront the Federation. With Islamic terrorists having already killed over 33,000 throughout the world, as opposed to the Russian Federation having killed no one in any terrorist act of any kind, MOD experts in this report state the Obama regime globalist, true, and satanic agenda being forced upon President-elect Trump is now exposed for the entire world to see, and whose hatred of Russia is due to the teaching of all Federation students from the 5th to 10th grade, a course titled The Spiritual and Moral Foundation of Civilization in Every Nation for Thousands of Years, that exposed these globalists for who they really are, while at the same time imparting Christian morality and values the West has long sought to destroy. To President-elect Trump, however, having these new globalist enacted laws directing him, this report continues, remains in doubt as the silent coup being led against him by the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency has now accelerated, with the Washington Post now hilariously quoting these off-the-record spies alleging that Russia helped him win the presidency. The Washington Post, this report explains, is one of the CIA's main central propaganda mainstream media fake news outlets that was purchased by the shadowy American billionaire Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, 3 months after the CIA had given him a staggering $600 million secret contract, and who just weeks ago put 200 American alternative media websites on the list of known Russian propaganda, but then had to retract the spurious claim as being fake after being exposed for the charlatans they really are. Likewise, this report continues, President-elect Donald Trump exposed the CIA Washington Post cabal as being fake news over their false claim the Russians elected him by stating yesterday that these are the same people that said Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, and who is supported in his statement as the CIA Washington Post ran an incredible fake news, 140 front page stories and 27 editorials pushing for America's illegal 2003 Iraq invasion, which left close to 1 million people dead and continues to leave a trail of destruction across the Middle East. Also, in the CIA's fake news propaganda mainstream media orbit, MOD experts in this report detail is the $1 billion valued through its never turned a profit, Huffington Post, who immediately after CIA Washington Post posted their fake news article saying that Russia elected Trump, released an article titled "Russia Stole the Presidency, the Electoral College Can Take It Back," claiming that President-elect Trump and all Republican Party congressmen that support him are traitors. Most dangerous to American democracy, though, this report warns, is that this CIA Washington Post, Huffington Post, fake news cabal pushing for this silent coup against President-elect Trump are calling for millions of Hillary Clinton supporters to take to the streets and demand the Electoral College deny Trump the presidency and put in his place to be the next U.S. President, Jeb Bush. With this CIA Washington Post to Huffington Post fake news cabal now openly calling for Electoral College chaos to overtake America, this report continues, the Italian mafia linked U.S. Congressman Dave Sicily has now joined the silent coup against President-elect Donald Trump too, and stated just hours ago, to the extent that foreign interference in the United States presidential election may have influenced the final result. I believe the electors have the right to consider that. And as yet another Hillary Clinton elector from California has filed a U.S. federal lawsuit in support of the silent coup effort to block Trump's path to the presidency. This report further states the American fake news propaganda mainstream media has failed to inform the citizens of that nation about the grave warning issued just days ago by the Colorado Attorney General Cynthia Kaufman, who told federal judge in her state this court should not countenance plaintiffs' attempts to dismantle the Electoral College from within. It should reject it as an affront to this nation's model of democracy. This effort to disenfranchise millions of Coloradoans by usurping their collective choice of candidates and replacing it with plaintiffs' own personal opinions about who is fit for the office of president, holding otherwise would cause chaos. As the European Union already being warned it is on the brink and will soon become a war zone, this report concludes, and should this CIA Washington Post, Huffington Post fake news mainstream media cabal be successful in their silent coup to overthrow President-elect Trump, the United States likewise will head to the brink of all-out civil war, and exactly what Hillary Clinton warned about if she was defeated and Trump elected. And that the United States has done for decades to other nations too. Article that I have, it's off of, let's see, here we go. It's off of Liberty Writers News, and it says Donald Trump just signed a new deal that has the Chinese government going insane. Donald Trump just picked fights with plenty of business tycoons and even royalty, but none of them can come close to the epic new fight with China. First, Trump decided to have a phone call with the president of Taiwan, despite the U.S. ignoring Taiwan in favor of China for decades. Then China hit back by calling Trump a diplomatic rookie who cannot make America great again without China. Dummies, America can be plenty of great without China and their slave labor. That's why Trump got back at them today in the best ever way. He signed a deal with Japanese bank called SoftBank that is investing $50 billion in the U.S. to create 50,000 new jobs. Says not only that, but the main investor in the project is Foxconn, which is one of the biggest and most powerful of all Taiwanese companies. It says, oh, and did I mention the Foxconn is also looking at relocating their iPhone factories to the U.S. to avoid Trump's import tax? Now, tell me that won't make a ton of new jobs. China has basically abused and manipulated the U.S. economy to build their own country and take our place in the world. So I say, welcome to the game, Taiwan. You deserve your independence, and China deserves to be held accountable for their crimes. The next article that I have is off of Liberty Writers News. Says, unbelievable. Trump just unveiled a huge surprise for America today. Donald Trump picked General John Kelly for cabinet position as Director of Homeland Security. This is a great choice. CBS broke the story today. Kell is the third general to be picked for a position. He joins General James Mattis and Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. This is a good thing. We need people that can help build our military. This is huge. It gets me so excited seeing that Trump is picking military people to run this country. It's time to make ourselves strong again. And there is a video here if you want to see more about General John Kelly. And it says, share this news, patriots. So there you have that article. The next one and the final one in this segment is off of Liberty Writers News. And it says, last night, this Texas man attacked Trump. Today we found out who he works for. Gosh almighty, this is a mess. Texas presidential elector Chris Suprin said recently that he will not cast his vote for Trump. He pledged to support the Republican nominee, and he lied. Suprin is a big hashtag Never Trumper. It's on his Twitter timeline here in this article. It says he has a megaphone strategist listed as his PR firm. Megaphone Strategist was founded by Van Jones. You remember Van Jones? He's the white lash guy. And there's video here if you want to take a look at that. And it says, well, Van Jones founded Missouri PR to use PR as a tool to diversify progressive movements. Let me rephrase that correction. It says, why so-called conservative using far left company founded by CNN's favorite crank, Van Jones. You can't make this stuff up. We at Liberty Writers News are just putting this information out there. It's for you to decide what it means that this rogue electorate that's breaking his promise to the people is connected to progressive movements. Let's let Michelle Macon weigh in on Van Jones, and there's a video of that if you want to take a look at it. So that's what I had for you in this episode about Donald Trump. I hope you enjoyed that, and I do have some more news, so there'll probably be some more videos today. It just keeps piling up, folks.